Also on that show were Dr. Nansata Yakubu, a development consultant and political scientist with the University of Ghana, Dr. Elidu Seidu. Here's what they had to say.
Town hall meetings are effective political communication tools. It helps you to be able to align what you have set out to achieve in a very coherent manner, to try to remain consistent and to be able to establish a certain credibility about issues that might be disputed in the public domain or indeed by your political opponents. So it's like a one tool that you can employ to be able to communicate effectively. It has its own advantages and what we would call disadvantages. On the advantages, you can try to get the media, you can leverage on media participation to be able to reach a wider audience. And indeed, in a time like this one, getting on the road might be difficult, especially if you are in government.
The town hall meetings, I just wanted to add to my senior colleague's submission. You see, they can serve two major purposes. It is a good governance tool, a tool for enhancing good governance by deepening transparency and accountability, but it is also a tool for political communication. In the first instance, the element of transparency comes in when government is able to tell people what they have done and then provide an opportunity for people to verify what they have said.
Well, joining us via Zoom is Dr. Amache Boateng of the KNUST Political Science Department. Thank you for your time here this morning. Over 1 hour of the Vice President detailing their achievements in infrastructure. Took their time to give us a general overview. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
All right. The Vice President took his time to give us a general overview of what has been achieved by this government with regards to infrastructure. Then he took his time to break it down. Now, apart from that, citizens have been given another opportunity to go to a website and look at the fine details of infrastructure development. How do you think this impacts our politics at this level?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And let me say good morning to our viewers. Actually, just like Mr. Franklin Kujo said, we realize that issue-based politics are taking over all other aspects of our political dialogue, political processes that are not desirable. This actually, to the best of my understanding, is not necessarily coming from the political parties, but it's like some dynamism in democracy is simply bringing to bear on the political parties to address pertinent issues. The competition is really getting keener. On the basis of that, you need to be ready to give accounts of your stewardship in office. And so we're seeing of late the competition revolving around what political parties have done in office. So definitely is telling us that our democracy is moving forward progressively, and if you like, zeroing in to a period where we should be seeing Ghana moving forward along developmental trajectory.
Now, apart from showing us a documentary and giving us fine details, like I mentioned earlier, there's also a website where you can visit and check out infrastructure. But one thing we observed was that apart from the interchange projects where the Vice President gave some monetary value to, we didn't have monetary value being attached to almost every infrastructure project he mentioned. What do you make of that, and what other thing do you think could have been added to further enhance the desire to use this as a tool for transparency?
Actually, the need to attach monetary value to these projects is critical. And like I said, it's also going, it's going to come up as it is. Once again, you see, politicians are not necessarily altruistic. Like us, they are all self-interested individuals. So left alone, they will do what they want to do. But then democracy as it is, it's such that periodically you need to give accounts of your stewardship. So now we are being, shown infrastructure. And then, citizens, civil society organizations will move forward, will put pressure to bear on them, not just to tell us what you have done, but let's also see whether we have money for, value, the projects that you're talking about, give us the cost so that we know exactly what is happening. So the fight against corruption virtually is being, brought to the fore, but it will come gradually, with time. It will also, be added to these dialogue that the political parties are having with the good people of Ghana. So accountability and transparency manifested. Elements of good governance, yes, but it's going to deepen with time when, they are made to also tell us how much the projects cost and stuff like that.
Finally, Doc, how do we take this a step further by ensuring that it really becomes the nature of our politics, where we move beyond the insults and the name calling to being very issue-based?
Politicians want to be in government. I just recall a statement attributed to President Kufuor that he prefers to be a messenger in a political party that is in government, to be a major officer in a political party in opposition. Politicians are, their work is to be in government, to be in politics. When they are not in government, they are out of office. And so this process of, being rewarded by keeping them in office when they deliver, when they tell us what they are doing and we are satisfied with that, then voters eventually will reward them by voting for them to stay in office. So with time, given the fact that we successfully sanitize our political processes and we have reasons to believe that the electoral process, are free and fair, and that no political party ahead of time could claim, a victory. I mean, just by virtue of their ability to manipulate the processes. So when we have free and fair elections, then definitely they are going to be rewarded subsequently, by serving society faithfully and accounting properly to us, and then coming out with transparency. In fact, this sort of a project that we've been taking through, you could go online and cross-check the work done there. It's an element of transparency, manifestation of transparency. And so going forward, when people go through this and then they are satisfied, definitely they will talk about it. And Ghanaians who are not in a position to access them will hear, others discuss them on TV, on radio, and then political parties eventually becoming rewarded will work to institutionalize, our politics during development.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kwesi Amarche-Boateng is a political scientist with the the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. This is your election headquarters. Now, here at your election headquarters, we don't only focus on issues regarding Ghana's politics, but in the sub-region as well. Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita has resigned after being detained by soldiers Tuesday. In a televised address on the country's state TV, Mr. Keita said he was also dissolving the government and parliament. Earlier on Tuesday, the mutinying soldiers took control of the Kati camp. There has been anger among troops about pay and continuing conflict with jihadists, as well as widespread discontent with the former president. Let's get some analysis from Colonel Festus Abuaji, retired. Thank you so much for joining the show, sir. As a lecturer on peacekeeping, following the timeline of this Mali crisis, we understand that this started as early as 2018, following the re-election of President Ibrahim Boubacar. The ECOWAS tried to intervene. In fact, they laid out a roadmap to maintain peace in the area because there were demonstrations and all. What does this say, this current incident, say about the strength of ECOWAS in resolving political issues of its member states?
Well, first of all, let me instead welcome you. I realize that you disappeared from the media space for quite a while, so you're welcome.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Great.
Now, the Mali situation may not necessarily be a benchmark to judge whether ECOWAS is doing well enough or not. But one could, argue along that way. In terms of the analysis of the conflict, we need to bring into the debate the historical factor that Mali, for all the wrong reasons, happens to be highly unstable, and indeed has been unstable just shortly after independence. If my data is correct, this is about the third coup that Mali is having. And one worrisome dimension of this coup is that whereas the first coup occurred 8 years after independence, and it took over 20 years to have the second coup in 1991, now you had the coup by Captain Sanogo, if I recall correctly, in 2012. And then about 8 years later, you have another coup. The only difference being that 92 was by a captain, this time is by a colonel and a general. So that's one side of the debate. The other side is the linkages or interlinkages between the incidents of the coups and rebellions and jihadism and ethnic conflicts in some parts of the country. So the mix of factors make Mali highly unstable. And then you add to that mix questions around good governance and corruption, which are featured prominently in the grievances that inform the opposition to demand the exit of IBK, as you mentioned. And ECOWAS trying to find the middle ground through two diplomatic interventions, first by former president of Nigeria, Jonathan, and then the other interventions by a group of, presidents and so on, including our own, to say that could you have a government of national unity as an interim? But this was rejected by the opposition, who demanded that, look, IBK was beyond redemption because of the degree of corruption and his inability to address the rebellion in the Azawad area, which is worsening, as we know, and now has spilled over.
Hello, Kano?
Into Burkina Faso. So ECOWAS used the diplomatic tools. Yes. Hello? Hello?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Unfortunately, we don't control the internet. But I'm saying that ECOWAS, as required, has deployed the diplomatic tools. As the case stands now, I'm not sure whether the government of national unity should be or would be on the table. It may very well be that there has to be early elections. But let's also recognize that ECOWAS and the African Union and the UN and the international community, particularly France, have over the period tried to deploy conflict management tools. So ECOWAS was there in 2013 in the wake of the rebellion and the Tuareg uprising and so on and so forth, handed over to the AU, which established AFISMA, and then AU shortly transitioned the AFISMA to the UN, which is the MINUSMA, which is currently in place, a very large peacekeeping force. And all of these deployments have been backstopped by the French, which in 2013 deployed Operation Serval, and reclaim the territory that the jihadists had, taken from the state. And then subsequently has Operation Barkhane, quite a large French force with very serious capabilities. Then you add to that the regional intervention initiative in the form of what we call the G5 Sahel, which now brings Mauritania and Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger and Chad to try and hold the jihadists at bay in that belt. Right. Now, all of these, it does appear, are not quite delivering peace and stability in the case of Mali. So we need to continue with the conversation and find solutions or mechanisms that will help.
Colonel.
This coup worsens the situation a great deal,
You've mentioned the influence of rebel groups and terrorist ones as well. We haven't heard from the interim military government that has taken over. But do you see an end in sight, even if Mali holds elections without dealing with the presence of these rebel and terrorist groups? Are we ever going to see an end in sight to this?
Maybe not in the short term. Now, we need to recall that in 2012, the grievance that Captain Sanogo used was that the state of Mali had sent them to go and fight the jihadists without adequately equipping them or resourcing them and not adequately remunerating them. It may very well be that this type of military grievance is at the core of this current coup. So we need to hear from the coup makers, the colonel and the general, who should tell the international community what their plans are in terms of restoration of normalcy, the governance aspects, and then their plans for addressing this Tuareg issue. But when you take the Tuareg issue coupled with the insurgency or jihadism and so on, it's quite a complex mix, and I don't think while the military government currently, headed by these two senior officers, are trying to establish or consolidate their rule, they can immediately address the question of the instability in the Azawad and or the instability, ethnic instability or conflict between the Dogon, the Bambara, and the Fulani people in the central part of Mali. They need to be given a bit of time, but they don't have time. So as ECOWAS and the AU are doing, they need to now engage, and try to find some working solution. Now, the restoration of a civilian rule would not necessarily address the conflict issues that confront Mali, but it will help, probably, more than the kind of instability that the coup itself now throws into the equation.
Finally, Colonel, do you see a spillover? I mean, we know that, like with the case of Mali, it's been simmering since 2018. And there are other African countries that have some form of political tension. Do you think this will send a cue or set a bad precedence in recent times?
Well, to draw any such conclusion, one needs to look at the factors of the context of the conflict. Now, immediately what comes to mind is the irredentism around the Tuareg rebellion, which emanates from the inability or the unwillingness of the state of Mali after independence to consolidate a devolved government for the Tuaregs. You see, so that factor of irredentism, the Tuaregs in Mali wanting to join up with the Tuaregs in Niger and Tuaregs elsewhere, is something, for instance, that we in Ghana need to take seriously. because it has synergies or it has some linkages with the question of Western Togoland and the dimension of Ewe irredentism, that Ewes in Ghana and Ewes in Togo. And when I say Ewes in Ghana, I mean some Ewes, precisely those who subscribe to the Western Togoland agenda of, I think, Papavi, I've forgotten his full name. So that's one dimension. Now, the non-delivery of socio-economic
Too bad. Keita was making a point about Ghana taking a cue from what's happening in Mali now. Too bad the technology failed us. But we've been talking about the situation in Mali and how it plays out in the sub-region. Let's come back home. And some educationists are worried about the leakage of some papers being written by senior high school final year students in the ongoing West Africa Senior School Certificate examinations. A total of 375,737 candidates are writing the WASSCE, which started on Monday, July 20. Now, this figure comprises of 187,574 males and 188,163 females. Now, 313,837 out of the total candidates are the first batch of students who have enrolled in government's flagship free senior high school policy, with the remaining 61,900 being private school candidates. In all, 60 subjects, including 4 core and 56 electives, are being written. Now, the concerns about leakages of some papers has raised the issues of validity and output of students during the examinations. Kofi Asare is Executive Director for Education Watch Africa, and Peter Anti is Executive Director for the Institute for Education Studies, and they've joined us for a discussion on this matter. Thank you, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Mr. Asare. First, it was student protest as a result of strict invigilation. Now we are understanding that some of the questions have actually leaked, and not only that, the examiners, their contacts, have also leaked as well. It must be really terrible times in our education sector, am I right?
Yeah, greetings to your audience. It's a bit disturbing when it becomes trendy, like that. Of course, leakage in examination papers is not new. It's been happening every other year. But what is worrying in this case is, apart from the magnitude, is the size of names, telephone numbers, email addresses, schools, and subject areas of all examiners in the country who work on the WASSCE. In the international assessment regime, there is a standard. And one of the standards is that they have safeguard mechanisms. One safeguard responsibility of the assessor, that is WAEC in this case, is not to disclose the identity of the assessors. Because if Kofi Asare is the person who is marking economics, and you disclose my identity and my contact and my school and everything, if I feel Yabuedu can target me and do something to me, or if Yabuedu gets to know that I am going to mark papers likely, they will come and they will try to influence me. And so it defeats the principle of impartiality of the examiner and all that. Unfortunately, this is also out in the media. Yesterday, WAEC confirmed that it is actually a document and that they are investigating it right out. And so it's very, very disturbing, and we are very much concerned as well.
Mr. Anti, WAEC is downplaying the possibility of students taking advantage of the leaked contacts of examiners. Do you agree?
WAEC should rather be very worried that in this time and age where the certificate issued out by an examining body should have that kind of validity. At this time and age, we seem to call the authenticity and the validity of their certificate to question. There's no way that the details of an examiner should be in the public space. I have marked for economics for some years. I did for about 4 or 5 years, and I stopped. And it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen, because the very moment that people get to know those who are marking papers, especially with this list that have the centers, the subjects, name, the subjects, and then the email addresses of the examiners, it becomes very easy for you to know where the questions are, the scripts will be marked. So if you are privy to where your scripts have been sent to, which may be the Cape Coast Center, all that you need to do is to look out for the examiners marking economics in Cape Coast, and then you can, you know, we are in Ghana, you can influence these examiners to do certain things in your favor. Apart from that, you should also, they should also note that when these contacts of these examiners are out, then the schools that they are even teaching in, they expose these teachers in these schools, because people might think that they have access to the questions, and they will definitely find ways and means to contact them in order to influence the outcome of the exams. And why should be very concerned, we are surprised that they want to downplay the magnitude of the situation that we are facing, especially this year.
So let's look for solutions now. The threats are there, the danger, especially for examiners, also exists. So what should we be doing to prevent the consequences of this leakage?
For us, we think that this has become very persistent over the years. We have gone through this process, always complaining of leakage of questions over the years, and at the end of the day, we don't see anything happening. We think that it is time that the authorities in the country take this up and deal with the issue once and for all. How do they do that? I have seen a press release from my brother Kofi to the Parliament Select Committee of Education advocating that they should sit on this. We have also released a press statement asking for a bipartisan probe into these allegations, and not looking at it for only this year, but since let's say for the past 5 years, this has been happening. So there should be a bipartisan investigation into it, where WAEC would be brought on board, Ghana Education Service would be brought on board, the various authorities of the senior high schools would be brought on board, and then the Ministry of Education and other bodies, relevant bodies, that will help to change the system going forward. It is important we do this, because for us, the sanctity of the senior high school certificate is now seriously questionable. And if you are not careful, the universities will start doing their entrance examination, because the performance of these students on paper will not match their performance when it comes to their real capabilities, when it comes to delivering what they are supposed to deliver. This is something we should take very, very seriously. All right, are proving to be very incompetent.
Let me come to you, Mr. Asare. I don't know if you've been observing what's been happening in the UK. There are issues with the A-level and GCSE examinations. A lot of students are complaining, and now what's happening is that they're trying to reform and rather focus on teacher assessment. Do you think that it is possible, you are in the education sector, to get a new set of examiners or possibly change our nature of assessment? Mr. Asare.
Yes. Well, what is happening in the UK is simply that, I mean, teachers are being given the opportunity to use what we call predictive, something like a predictive scores, more or less, because they are being given the opportunity to determine what they think, should be the grades of this. So the estimation or they are predicting the scores or grades, You see, their system is different, because in the UK, they have...
Mr. Asare, I only use that as an example to say that they are reforming based on recent happenings. And that's why I'm asking you, based on what we're experiencing here, is it possible to also put in some reforms? They didn't wait too long. When the issue started, within a short period, they've brought in the reforms. Is it possible to get new set of examiners to look at, or mark and assess these students, or change our mode of assessment altogether for this particular exam? That's what I'm asking.
For this particular exam, we have indicated to Parliament in our petition that we think that the examiners whose details have been, published more or less inadvertently by WASSCE cannot be examiners. They cannot play the role because the non-disclosure clause in their agreement has been violated, and it breaches the fundamentals of assessment. And so, should WASSCE go ahead and use this, the credibility of the examination will be called into question. And so they should change the examiners and bring in fresh ones. But the point I want to make is that I was dwelling on UK because we made proposals to Parliament similar to what is in the UK. Okay. We have proposed that there must be a regulator for the assessment industry in Ghana. Currently, there is no regulator for assessment in Ghana. WASSCE is an assessment body. They set their own standards, they appraise themselves, and then they are a judge in their own court. Anytime there are leakages, they themselves set a committee will exonerate them, and then nothing happens. And so we need, in the UK, they have what they call OFQA, the Office of Qualifications and Assessment. That office is the one that regulates all the assessment bodies like WASSCE in the UK. And so if your performance is below standards, they have the power to sanction you, including withdrawing your license. And so if we have NAPTEX in Ghana, we have WASSCE, we have the Cambridge International, we have IB, we have about 5, 6, 7, or 8 assessment bodies in Ghana, but there's no regulator. And so if we have a regulator, then the regulator can say that, look, or based upon our information on the magnitude of spread or this leakage, we think that you have to cancel the exam. That decision should not be taken by WASSCE as it is all the time. Okay. It has to be the preserve of the regulator. And the regulator can say that I am having an office of complaints where any member of the public can send information on alleged malpractices. And then this office, being an independent one, will investigate. WASSCE has no credibility. They have no luxury of an independent mind not to investigate such calls. And so we really need an independent regulator of assessment.
Finally, Mr. Asare, when I took the exams in 2000, sometime in the late 2000s, early 2000s, I beg your pardon, my English paper was cancelled because there were leakages. We've seen a lot happening with this particular exam, protests, violence, and now this. Should we be looking at doing same, or probably rescheduling the whole exam?
We don't have the competency to determine the magnitude that must warrant the cancellation of an entire examination. As I mentioned, unfortunately, WASSCE is their own judge in their court, and so only WASSCE determines what magnitude of leakage should warrant the cancellation. But what we are aware of is that the questions have been leaking on social media. Today, the cons papers were on, we saw the papers on social media around 10, 11 midnight there. It's always around. Okay. And so, see if perhaps nothing strange is happening, but the proliferation of social media and internet penetration and also mobile phones has actually festered, the growth of this industry.
So we shouldn't even cancel the papers that have been leaked. That's what you're saying, right? We shouldn't cancel them. All right.
We have called for an investigation by the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education into the activities of all those in the value chain, not only WASSCE, all those in the value chain, so that we can know where the issues are.
All right. Thank you.
WASSCE cannot investigate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Asare. Let me take Mr. Anti's last words. Your response to that question. Should we be looking at rescheduling or cancelling the papers, retaking them? Briefly, sir.
No, I don't think so. I think that we should allow them to write the papers, and then we go on with the investigation as has been called for. And we are hoping that when we do that, we'll be able to get answers to the challenges that we have faced over the years. We need to stop this, and this is the time to do that.
Thank you very much for your time, Peter Anti, the Executive Director of iFirst. Earlier, you heard Mr. Kofi Asare. He's with Education Watch Africa. You're watching News Desk with me, Benes Abubeidulansa. When we come back, we'll be bringing you updates from the world of business. Do stay. Thanks for your company. It's now time for business. And Director of Financial Stability at the Bank of Ghana is attributing the rising fraud cases in the banking sector to improved supervision and sanctions rather than deteriorating financial sector. reported fraud cases in the banking sector shot up by 5% to reach 2,295 cases in 2019. This has led to concerns about the current stability of the banking system, with some expressing fears of another cleanup in the sector. But Director of Financial Stability at the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Fred France, disagrees.
Of Ghana, we withdraw your license, put in the necessary measures to ensure that runs seamlessly. And so it doesn't, because we look at it, and if your behavior will affect the financial system, why not? We sanction you, but I'm saying is proportional. The sanction will be proportionate, and it must be in accordance with law, and it must be in accordance with the regulations that we have put out there. We will not just stand up and sanction you. We will go through the due process and sanction you accordingly.
Why are you not naming and shaming? I got from your interaction that yes, we've sanctioned these individuals, banks individually. Maybe other markets. I remember recently Wells Fargo. I mean, in other markets, even with just a fraction of more practice, they are heavy on you on the fines, and they tell the whole world that Wells Fargo is still indulging in practices that led to the collapse of the financial crisis. Maybe you are not. Why are you not naming and shaming?
Well, like I told you, we get the institutions to name themselves by putting out the sanctions, monetary sanctions, in their financial statements that they put out there. So yes, the institutions themselves will put out that we have been sanctioned by the central bank. So yes, that is where it starts. Other less sophisticated staff also have go through, or they get clearance from the Bank of Ghana through the database that we have. And depending on the level, key management personnel, for instance, is supposed to have some strong clearance from the security agencies as you employ them or you engage them. So yes, there are levels of security protocols that you probably might want to have, or that the system requires you to have before you engage, and these we enforce them.
So finally, are you optimistic and quite sure that going forward with all these structures that you put in place, we will see a minimization of these fraud cases, which will again go a long way to improve confidence in the sector?
I first and foremost want to assure the public and everyone that the financial system is strong, safe and sound. The Bank of Ghana has put up strong lenses and channels to unearth some of these things. Going forward, yes, as we continue to be as transparent as possible, as we continue to report all cases, as we continue to educate the public.
That'll be all for business in this edition of News Desk. When I come back, we'll be talking about that game between PSG and Red Bulls Leipzig. Do stay.